All right. Thank you all for tuning in to WJT 98.3 FM, your voice of music, your station. My name is Jeff Badu, and I'm a parallel entrepreneur and a wealth multiplier. I'm the founder and CEO of Badu Enterprises, LLC, which is a multinational conglomerate in the finance industry. Today, we'll be talking about buying versus leasing a car. So some tips and tricks, some things that you should keep in mind before you make the decision on whether to buy or lease your vehicle. So we'll just be covering some items like that. Would like to point out this is my last segment of the year. I'll actually be out of town for the rest of the year, and we'll be back the first Monday of January. So for those that usually tune in, just a few things to keep in mind. Before we get into the main topic of today, let's get to the market report. The market has been smoking hot this year. If you guys aren't aware, we've had a record year this year, and it is a great time to be a stock market investor. I'd like to shout out everybody that's tuned in on Facebook Live, everybody that's on that's listening live on the radio, 98.3 FM. So this report is as of December 13, 2019. Positive developments finally arrive in the ongoing trade war between the United States and China. This has been a debate that's been going on for the entire year. Even last year was going on. Last Friday, President Trump announced phase one of a trade deal with China. The president indicated that he would forego the imposition of tariffs scheduled for December 15th and reduce existing tariffs on about $120 billion of Chinese imports. According to the president's tweets, China has agreed to make large purchases of targeted farm, energy, and manufactured goods. A representative of the Chinese government said the purchases would total about $200 billion over 2 years. Meanwhile, United Kingdom under UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson's Conservative Party enjoyed a robust victory in last week's elections, securing a strong majority in Parliament. This new development should give Johnson the votes needed to secure a Brexit deal and foster a new relationship with the European Union. Finally, the Federal Reserve maintained interest rates, noting strong consumer spending and steady economic growth. All of this helped push stocks marginally higher for the week. Each of the benchmark indexes posted gains, led by the global Dow, most likely on the probability of a Brexit deal. The Nasdaq advanced close to 1%, followed by the S&P 500, the Dow, and the Russell 2000. The price of crude oil went up from $59.12 per barrel to $59.82, and the price of COMEX gold went up $14.64.50 to $14.80.20. The Dow Jones so far is up 20.61% this year. NASDAQ is up 31.64%. I mean, I've never seen a year like this. I don't think we've ever seen a year like this in the history of the stock market, as a matter of fact. 31.64% increase in the NASDAQ just in 1 year alone. S&P 500 is up 26.41%. Russell 2000 is up 21.46%. And the global Dow is up 17.44%. If you are not a stock market investor, or if you weren't in 2019, you lost big time. And I mean big time. You could have made a lot of money. Of course, it could have went the other way. But if you look at historical trends, you would notice that we've had way more positive years than we've had negative years. Stock market is very hot right now. If you're not an investor, it's highly recommended that you at least consider it because stocks are hot. I mean, they're very hot. And if you haven't thought about investing, or if you're not an investor, please highly consider becoming one. Federal funds target rate is up 1.5 to 1.75%, or that's what it's at currently. So interest rates basically. And then 10-year treasuries are 1.81%. They're down 87 basis points. So clearly bonds and treasuries haven't done too well over the past year. But stocks or equities have done extremely well this year. I mean, it's been a record year. I've never seen anything like it. We're at the peak of the peak. and I think will only continue going up. So with that being said, let's talk about today's presentation about buying versus leasing a car. Before that, let me just take a step back and welcome you all to the show Money Talks, where all we talk is money. We're live on WGHC 98.3 FM, your voice and music, your station. If you would like to call into the studio, it's 773-942. So if you would like to call into the studio, you can please feel free to do that. And then also, we are live on Facebook, so you can feel free to catch us live on our Facebook stream. But let's just go ahead and get into the topic. So buying versus leasing a car. This is one of the most heavily debated financial topics in the world today. Just to introduce you guys, leasing versus buying a car has been debated for a very long time. It's not a 10-year thing. This is a 100-year debate. Neither have a clear advantage over the other. So that's one thing I would like to point out. There's no real clear-cut answer to what you should do. Me personally, I prefer to buy a car, especially as a business owner, because you get more tax benefits. Whenever I make a decision, it's not just based off tax benefits, but the tax benefits are definitely big for me because I understand the ins and outs of the tax game. The decision depends on your personal preferences ultimately, and your needs. You should always, as with anything you do in life, do your due diligence and research. Don't just take anybody's word for it. Don't just listen to somebody and think that what they're saying is right. Do your research. Don't get too bogged down in it. But do some due diligence. Do some research. At least go on Google and look at 3 articles that sort of explain the topic. That's usually the rule that I use. Just go on Google, type in a topic. First 3 articles that pop up, look at it and see if it's saying the same thing that whoever's recommending to you is looking at. Now let's talk about the advantages of buying. So you own a car, and basically you can either continue to drive it, rent it out to someone else, sell it, or trade it in for a new car. Basically, when you're a buyer, you have more options than somebody who's leasing. Sites like Turo, Get Around, and Hire Car allow you to rent out your car to other people to make some money. So that can be a huge benefit right there. And essentially what you're doing now is you're turning a car into an asset that's producing income. So if you're buying a car, you can turn it into an asset by leveraging it to rent it out to other people. And this is mainly due to places like the sharing economy, for example. And then one of the keys to building wealth is to acquire assets that generate income. If you read the book Rich Dad, Poor Dad, you'll notice that an asset is something that generates you income. So if you can turn your car that you're driving personally into an asset that's producing income, maybe you don't drive it on the weekend, so you rent it out to people, then that could be a great decision right there. You're basically hitting 2 birds with 1 stone. Of course, in most cases, though, a car is a liability. And a reference is Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Because usually a car is draining money from your pocket. You're making monthly payments. You're paying for gas. You're paying for maintenance. You're paying for the car note, interest, registration fees. They're all draining money from your pocket. So a car in general is not really an investment until you turn it into an asset that's producing money for you. For example, for myself, I'm in a luxury car rental business. So we lease out luxury cars. Some of these cars are my vehicles as well. So I get to use them and I get to rent them out to other people. So it's an asset that's actually producing income. So just something to keep in mind there. And then it's good for people. Now, if you're looking to buy, here's an advantage. It's good for people who are looking to drive the same car over the long run. Although cars don't last too long, if you're in it for the long run, if you know you'll be in the city for the next 5 years or so, then buying a car could be a great idea. It can be very cost effective compared to renting. And then basically you're free to drive the car. I mean, you're basically free to drive the car for as many miles as you want. There's no mileage limit on the car as far as like being able to use it. There might be inherent mileage limits, but ultimately there's no true limit when it comes to your own car. Like nobody's going to tell you, hey, you have to stop driving at this point. And then you can keep the car in any condition you desire. It's your car. I mean, you can trash it. You can do whatever. You can sell your car at any time, maybe for a profit. Usually not the case. But let's say you don't like it. You can always sell it. You have the option to, at least. So buying is good overall for the long term. People who view it that they'll need the car for a pretty long time. And then you can carry minimum insurance coverage amounts that are required by state law. So no need to go overboard or anything like that. You just have to carry the minimum. You can modify your vehicle as much as you want. You want to put new tires on there, new rims, new tinted windows. Of course, follow your state laws, but you can basically do whatever you want to your own car. That's you have the option and the flexibility, and that's why buying a car could be seen as an advantage. Now let's talk about the disadvantages of buying. One of the disadvantages is that you typically must make a down payment, which is an upfront cost. When you look at the time value of money, it can hurt you in the long run because you could have took that money and invested it. Let's say today in the stock market, and you could have made up to 30-something%. And I'll share with you a secret. In my personal portfolio, I'm actually up 50% so far this year. So that could be a huge time value of money component right there. If you're up 50%, let's say you had $100,000 in the stock market before this year. If you're up 50%, that's $150,000 that would have ended up in your account at that time. So that's something to keep in mind there. And then typically you must settle for a lower trade-in value. So if you're looking to trade it in, I mean, that's something you can do, but you usually have to settle unless you're selling it to a third-party individual, which I recommend. So if you're looking to sell your car or you're looking to buy a new car, first sell it to a third-party individual. If it's a loan on it, make sure they pay off the loan first so that the bank can release the title. That's usually how you get your most bang for your buck. If you're trading it in, you always get a lower value for that car. So those are the two disadvantages of buying. So just so you know. And anything I say, I ultimately recommend you buy. But there are inherent advantages and disadvantages. Now let's talk about advantages of leasing a vehicle. So with leasing, you can trade it in the car very frequently. So you can trade in the car as many times as you want, basically, to always look at your lease agreements and all that good stuff. So leasing is good for people who like to switch cars very often. Perhaps you're an attorney or you're somebody who travels a lot. So you need to switch cars very often. Could be a good option. Maybe you do a lot of long distance travel. Of course, watch out for the mileage limits. And then monthly lease payment is typically lower than the monthly loan payment or car note. So that could be a time value of money component there where you can invest the difference into something like the stock market. So there's an opportunity cost of having a monthly monthly car note as opposed to a monthly lease payment. And then typically there's no down payment required when you're buying a car or leasing a car, but in some cases they do require it. Maybe your credit is not as good as they desire, so they might require you to put something, maybe an upfront lease payment of some sort. So leasing is really good for the short term. It's good for short-term use. Maybe somebody who is maybe in town for about a month or two or just needs something to get around for a few. It's definitely not a good idea for the long run. If you're planning to be somewhere for 5 years or so, you have no business leasing a car. But yeah, maybe you do a lot of road travels. Maybe you're in city to city. And so leasing could be a viable option for you. So it's good for the short term. So if you're somebody who's in a short term, you don't need a car for a long run, then leasing could be a great option for you. But if you need something long term, leasing, you have no business leasing the car. Now let's talk about the disadvantages of leasing. Disadvantage of leasing is that you must return the car if you lease it. That makes sense, right? It's you have to return something that you lease. You're basically borrowing the car from the bank, or from the car company. So you have to return the car once you lease it. In some cases, you can do some sort of buy-in option. So they have an option to buy, lease to own type of scenario. And then you will never own the car in most cases. So you've basically sort of wasted some dollars in a way. Annual mileage limit, I mean, it's pretty limited. So typically it's between 12,000 to 15,000 miles per year. So if you're somebody for the long run, you drive a lot, I mean, you have no business whatsoever leasing. But if you're somebody that just needs it maybe for a month or maybe 2 weeks here and there, then that could be a great option. So if you drive a lot, you have no business leasing a car. And there are penalties that may apply if there are damages to the car when you turn it in. So if the tiniest little scratch, I mean, they're so detailed about it. I know when somebody returns a car to me, I'm spot checking everything, seeing if there's any scratches there. I'm comparing the pictures. I mean, if there's anything damaged, that person is going to pay for it. Versus you owning a car, I mean, it's your car, so you can do whatever you want to it. You know, so if you're somebody that doesn't take good care of cars or doesn't take good care of anything in life, I mean, if you're not taking good care of your car, you're probably not taking good care of anything else in your life. So if you're one of those people, then leasing is definitely not for you. And then you can be stuck with your car for the term of the lease. Let's say you don't like the car or maybe something happens. Well, you're stuck with it. And then there's generally steep penalties if you terminate the car. And usually there's no sublease option or anything of that nature. Always consult with your car company. And Pakwasi Sam he said, "Good to know, Jeff. I have always thought leasing was a better option." Yeah, I would say it depends on the type of person you are. It depends on your needs. It depends on so many different things. If you're somebody who's long-term, please buy. If you're somebody who's short-term, who needs short-term use of the car, then go ahead and lease it. So it all depends on what you need. Same thing with a house. These are the same benefits for a house. And then, so moving on to some of the disadvantages. And you'll notice there's actually more disadvantages of leasing a car as opposed to owning a car. So typically you're required to carry more insurance than state minimums. Of course, the car company wants to protect its interest in the car. So, of course, they're going to require you to carry higher insurance. And then you typically cannot customize the car because this is not your car. You're borrowing it from somebody. You're leasing it from somebody. So you cannot customize it. You can't put tinted windows, your own rims. Sometimes you have to turn it in for maintenance once a month or so. I mean, it's such an inconvenience. Imagine having to go to a maintenance shop that you might not even like. So, yeah, to me, I just don't like. For me, I don't like it when I have to do things that I don't want to or it causes me inconvenience because something is not mine. I like to own it, and I like to reap the benefits of owning it. So just something to point out there. So overall, me personally, I'm a buyer. I'm into buying. I don't lease anything, including my phone. I don't lease anything. And I will always prefer owning something as opposed to renting it. I never see the need for renting something. If I know I'll need it, then I'm going to own it because I can sell it. I can do so many things with that asset. And everything I do, I try to turn it from a liability to an asset. You know, it's called leverage, basically maximizing the utility of that asset. For me, I have a long-term perspective in life. I look at things from a long term. I'm not your typical millennial, for lack of a better term, who looks at things from a short term. You know, I'm somebody that likes to look at things from a long run. I look at financial decisions from 10 years from now, not just a year from now or a month from now. I'm always in it for the long run. For example, I don't like term life insurance because you're basically borrowing a term policy. You'll never own the policy. And for the average person, they usually don't die within that term, so they're basically missing out on that money. Of course, we all need life insurance, but why lease it when you can just own it? Or renting an apartment. I mean, the only time I've rented an apartment was if I was there for a short term, for example, college. That's something that was short term. But as soon as I moved back to Chicago, I immediately bought a place because I know this is an asset for me that I own. And I can always sell it. I can lease it to somebody to produce income. I can reap the tax benefits of that asset. I can pass it down from generation to generation. I can use it as a home equity line of credit and get another property. When you're leasing, you don't get any of these benefits. So there's inherent benefits when it comes to owning something as opposed to leasing it, or even a car. I mean, in the state of Illinois, you're usually prohibited from leasing or subleasing your car to another person, or renting it out on some of these sites like Turo, Hire Car, and Get Around. Versus you owning your own car, you can do whatever you want with it. So always consider these benefits. Don't just look at it from, oh, okay, leasing is cheaper. It might be cheaper now, but in the long run, it can hurt you. So always look at that. They came out with a rent report, and the amount of rent that people paid in the U.S. just for homes alone is more than the German economy over the past 10 years, in the past decade. Americans have spent more money on rent than the entire German gross domestic product, or GDP. I mean, which is insane. That's insanity. I mean, how can one sector, you're talking about a sector of just renting, is more than the GDP, gross domestic product, of Germany in the past 10 years. That's just sickening to me. What does that mean? We need to start owning things. Too many people rent. Trust me, you're making me happy because I'm a landlord. But at the same time, when you think about it, it makes you sick to the stomach. Like, why are people renting so much? Is it because of credit? Is it because they're scared to own? Maybe they lack commitment. Maybe that's a skill we need to teach people. Maybe the young ones. I don't really know what it is. Of course, we went through a detailed segment on buying versus renting a home, and we came to the conclusion, or at least I came to the conclusion, that it's much smarter financially and non-financially to own a home versus renting a home, especially if you have the means to do it. If you don't, then hey, you have to do what you have to do. But to rent something for a long term, for lack of a better term, to just throw money away, I don't think is the smartest financial decision for anybody that's out there. And for those that are just tuning in, we're live on Facebook. You can find me at Jeff Badu, JEFFBADU, on my Facebook stream. Feel free to contribute. Feel free to ask any questions you want. We're pretty much talking about buying versus renting a car, or buying versus leasing a car. And we're just sharing some of the things that you'll find in common from a buyer's perspective versus a renter's perspective. You can also call into the studio line, 773-942-7167. Once again, 773-942-7167. But back to the topic, why not buy? Especially if you know you'll be in it for the long run. Why be afraid of commitment? Why be afraid to own an asset that can produce you income in the future? The reason why a lot of people are behind in life is because they don't have any assets. Nothing that can be passed down from generation to generation. Nothing that's producing income. We're always in this we're always in this temporary mentality of have fun now and don't build for the future. That's how you get behind. That's how you get stuck working at Walmart when you're 75 years old. By the time I retire, the retirement age will probably be 75. Right now, it's at about 67. And you have people working at Walmart because they didn't build enough for retirement. When Social Security tanks in 2035 or sooner, it will be a problem. A lot of people will be homeless. A lot of people will have to go back to work. So this is real. This like 10 years from now, just rewatch this segment and just notice what will happen 10 years from now. A lot of older folks are going to be going back to work. Of course, they're not going to go back to work at their companies such as Microsoft or AT&T and the Johnson & Johnson and these Fortune 500 companies, because at that time, they won't need your skill sets anymore because you don't have any skills at that point. Your health will be deteriorated. People are living longer now, but they're living unhealthier. So why bring in a 75-year-old when they can just bring in a 20-year-old millennial who can basically do everything and give them the same benefits and pay them less too? So I think we really have to be careful financially. A lot of people are about to go in financial distress. It's sad to say it on this radio because I know it's true. And that's why I do what it is that I do. That's why I'm sweating, blood, sweat, and tears day and night teaching people financial literacy, because I know what's going to happen in the future. I'm not somebody, I don't have a crystal ball, but it's very easy to predict the future. Very easy. I mean, just look at the trends. Read the trends. Read the report. I listen to Bloomberg Radio every single morning. Every single morning while showering, while brushing my teeth, I'm listening to the market. I hear what's going on, and I know what's going to happen 10 years from now. I don't think we'll be in a recession next year. I mean, I think that's just, why would we be in a recession in a year that the stock market is up over 25%? It doesn't make any sense if you think about it. And there's no signs whatsoever. There's no leading indicators of a recession anytime soon. So that you can just throw away. But 10 years from now, when people are going broke, really broke, right now, Social Security is still pretty decent. People are still able to work. Things are good. The gig economy is hot. Tech stocks are skyrocketed. So people are good. Everything is all peachy. Everything is nice. Of course, there are some people struggling, and there are a lot of people struggling right now. But I would say people really have to be careful when it comes to this money thing. You have to build assets today that would generate you income in the future. It's not about just living today. It's about the future. It's about the economy. And that's why they say the rich get richer, because they know this stuff. They're taking advantage of all of these things. And they say the poor get poorer because the poor, not necessarily that they don't know. Most people just don't know. Which for those folks, you got to cut them some slack because they just don't know. But for the people, for example, that are listening to this segment and understand it and are thinking about it, but still are doing the same things they're doing today, I would say shame on you. In 2020, we're keeping it real. In 2020, we're definitely keeping it real. We're not sugarcoating anything. We're gonna keep it raw. We're gonna keep it real, and it's true. This is stuff that's really going to happen. And 30 years from now, it's going to be bad. Why is it that all these companies are doing well, but people are suffering financially? Because they don't do a lot of these things that we're talking about on the radio. So it will be my goal to get the information out to as many people as possible. My foundation, the Badu Foundation, is launching next year, which will provide financial literacy to the homeless and the youth, primarily those in underserved and underprivileged communities, distributing financial literacy resources, giving out scholarships, and just giving out information that would be very valuable to somebody, because I don't want to see anybody suffer. And unfortunately, I know people will suffer 10 years from now. There are people that will suffer 5 years from now. But the good thing is you can set yourself apart by implementing some of the things that we're talking about now, because this is real. It doesn't matter how many degrees you have. You can have a master's degree, you can have 20 doctorate degrees. This stuff is very relevant. You can thrive in your career. You can do whatever it is you want. But when it comes to the finances, you really, really, really need to set yourself apart. And all you have to do is follow some of these simple, very simple steps. Automate your investing. Set a savings target every month. Automate your saving just like you're paying bills. Why would you write a check to AT&T for $100 every month before you save money, before you put that money into your bank account? It doesn't make any sense from a mental standpoint. And for those who don't know where that book comes from, it comes from Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Basically, he said, pay yourself first. If you haven't read that book, please go ahead and read it. As a matter of fact, anybody that enrolls in my course, the Badu Foundation provide free financial literacy education and courses to the public. Anybody that enrolls in it must read Rich Dad, Poor Dad by the end of the program. It is a must that people read it because it can change lives. I wish I knew about that book when I was young. I didn't find out about that book really until a friend told me about it when I was 23. I was like, wow, are you serious? There's a book out there like this. I read it at the age of 24, and it changed everything. I knew about money, but wow, I really knew about money after that. And I just kept doing more and more research. You can only become a master at something if you keep researching and practicing it. So this topic, buying versus renting, it goes way further than just the money part. This is about building wealth. In some cases, remember, it does make sense to be a renter, but in most cases, you need to own that asset because you can do so much more with it. So for me, I buy long-term stocks. I use the 80-20 rule. And I disclose to the public, my portfolio this year is up 50%. 50%. The stock market is up 26%, or the S&P 500 is up 26%. And that's because I do a lot of research. I'm not even somebody who trades on a daily basis. I trade maybe once a month, versus your typical day trader. I have a few clients that are doing very well right now, very well trading. But it's not about sitting in front of your computer trading every day. It's about understanding fundamental and technical analysis in order to analyze the intrinsic value of a stock and to determine whether the stock is overpriced or underpriced. And I can tell you the companies that are mainly composed of my portfolio: Amazon, Apple, Microsoft, Square. I bought Square when they were at $12 when they became, basically when they first became public. And now Square is trading at way more than $12. I can tell you that much. So basically, I listen to the radio. I listen to investment news. And I just take advantage of the information. It's not simple. It's not hard. But at the same time, anybody can do it. You just have to put your mind to it. You don't have to listen to Bloomberg Radio like myself. You don't have to be in it every single day, but you do have to be knowledgeable of this stuff because it's important. It doesn't matter how many degrees you have. It doesn't matter if you have the most beautiful woman in the world. When it comes to money, they say money is the root of all evil. Yeah, it is true. The lack of money really is the root of all evil. It's a very well-known fact. So if you want to get ahead financially, you need to take, and they're so simple steps, but the thing is, everybody's so busy. Everybody's so busy working. Everybody's so busy doing something. And I'm like, what are you so busy doing? In my next book, I make a quote. Everybody claims they're so busy, but they're not busy really making money. Why are most people so broke and they're claiming they're so busy? It doesn't make any sense. Like, why are you too busy to look at your finances? Is it because you're scared, or is it because you just don't know what you're doing? So the reason why I'm creating the Badu Foundation is, for one, to remove the excuse of, we don't know. You will know, trust me. It will be promoted everywhere. We'll be giving out free books, free workshops. We'll do pop-up workshops. And, we'll be out there in the community. It's not just going to be me. It'll be a lot of people. At a certain point, you'll see 1,000 of us out in the communities teaching financial literacy, going out to the schools, going out to the homeless shelters, going out to the churches. Before the pastor even gives a sermon, we're going to be the one speaking. Because this stuff is important. In 2020, there's no excuses. No excuses. We're going heavy. We're giving it. We're not sugarcoating anything in 2020, right? So please make sure you're listening to these segments. Check out my website, jeffbadu.com, jeffbadu.com. You can call me anytime, text me anytime, 773-679-7198. Once again, 773-679-7198. I will respond if you're serious enough. Because remember, in 2020, we're not messing around. We're not sugarcoating anything. We're giving the information raw, uncut. We're not. It's truly stuff that we really need to implement. I'm willing to risk my own life for a lot of this stuff because this is something I truly care about. It's a part of my purpose, after all. So, just so you have an idea of what's going to happen in 2020. We're going to be pushing this out to the masses. We already are through the radio, through Facebook. A lot of people that are subscribed to my website. Coming out with 2 books next year. One of them I'll be giving out for free, 7 Figures, How to Become a Millionaire. That's my first book. That'll be released next month on January 6th. Be giving it out for free. No excuses about, I can't afford it. Just going to give it out for free, teaching you the millionaire mindset, the things you need to do in order to become a millionaire or maintain a status. And then the second one is called Infinite Expansion. Basically, how to infinitely expand your mind. I think it will be a powerful book. Took me about 30 days to write it, and it's in the editing process right now. So it'll be released sometime in the first quarter of the year, potentially in the second quarter, depending on how distribution goes. It will be sold. That one will be sold on Amazon. It's dedicated to Warren Buffett, who's near and dear to my heart. Somebody who's truly a role model to me, somebody who I look up to. He's a great person, in case you haven't gotten to know him. But I'll leave it up to you with this information. And here's a final thought. You must know yourself and your desires. There's no one size that fits all when it comes to buying or leasing. And ultimately, there's no one size fits all when it comes to your finances. You have to be the one that takes ownership of it. Nobody is going to tell you how to manage your money. You have to be the one that manages your own money. But you can have somebody who helps you. But ultimately, you will have to learn the stuff. So with that being said, we'll just end the segment here. Definitely thank you guys for tuning in to WJC 98.3 FM, your voice and music, your station. As a reminder, I will not be here next week. We may do a replay of some sort. I also won't be here the following week because I'll be on my annual end-of-the-year trip in the beautiful land of Jamaica. And we'll be back on January 6th. We're starting off the year strong. The foundation will be launched next summer. Tax season is heavy. We have so many things that are going to happen. But definitely thank you guys. It's been a great year. Oh, yeah, on January 6th, we'll be doing a market recap of how 2019 went. It's a strong year. You have to get in the game if you're not in it. It's beautiful. You can reap a lot of rewards. So once again, thank you all for tuning in to WJC 98.3 FM, your voice and music, your station. My name is Chef Badu, and I look forward to continuously delivering you all some content. Thank you.